From the culture of the American South, where roots hold stories, comes a natural deodorant inspired by generations of wisdom. Introducing Rootwork, the all-natural foundational Black American-based deodorant infused with the magic of High John the Conqueror root. Our unique blend enriched with this legendary root offers 24-hour protection, rooted in the power of nature. Embrace this deodorant that celebrates culture, history, and your well-being. Unlock the magic of Rootwork today. Experience the pure essence of nature. Visit rootworkstyle.com and make the switch to a healthier cultural choice.
Hitch Slap, what's up, man?
Tariq, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, thank you. Just want to ask you a question, what you think about IQ as it relates to kind of individual differences. So two people from the same ethnic group, how much do you think is genetic? How much do you think is not genetic?
Right. And are you Australian?
Yeah, I am. That's right.
Okay. The IQ thing is kind of it's just used as a justification to harm people who are non-white, because all of the white people with low IQs, there's never any justification to really harm them. The IQ thing is always used to try to justify harming black people. They say, well, black people inherently have a lower IQ, yet you have educational and systematic deprivation. So that contradicts itself. If there's a group of people whose IQ is already low, there would be no need for systematic deprivation. You would have to give them the best of things if their IQs are low, but you don't. You punish and you deprive. So that means you're intimidated by these people who you say have a lower IQ. So that's a real interesting dynamic. Do you think you as a person? Do you think you as a person of European descent, Britain? You're from Britain. Your lineage is in Britain. Do you think that there's a higher IQ there?
I'm more than happy to answer, but I just want to preface by saying I'm not talking about race differences. I'm just saying two black Americans, one might be smarter than the other. How much of the difference between two random black Americans, two random Europeans from the same race or same group, how much do you think of the differences there are genetic? That was more my question, if that's okay.
That's a question that doesn't really make any sense. It's like an extremely random non sequitur. It just really doesn't make any sense without any kind of context. What's the context of that? Because the context has to be some type of racial justification for something. So what's the racial justification conclusion you're trying to come to?
For example, let's take a homogeneous country like Poland. Most people are of Polish descent there. Some people in a classroom in Poland, some kids in the class will be very smart, other people will be not as smart in that class. My question is, how much do you think the differences in intelligence between, a class in Poland or any other place where everybody's the same race, or do you think that some people are smarter than others, for genetic reasons, who are from the same race?
No, I don't think that race has anything to do with intelligence. I really don't think that, because if that were the case, why would you deprive people if you designate their race of being lower IQ? The white society, who decides whose IQs are the highest or the lowest, it's determined by the white supremacists. And they said that they said
maybe,
that.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Maybe I can put it a different way. Like, you have a family of 10 people. Do you think, or is it your opinion, that some people in that family, same parents, same siblings, whatever, do you think some people in that family are more intelligent than other people in that family for genetic reasons? Or do you think genes play no role in intelligence for 10 siblings from the same family with the same parents?
Yeah, there could be some kind of congenital deficiencies. Yeah, of course. There could be certain birth defects, congenital neurological deficiencies. So yeah, different factors play in, of course. So
The reason I ask is I should have kind of said this at the start. Some people think that take 10 people from the same family, they're all healthy. None of them are any kind of medical issue or whatever. Some people think that everybody in that family should have identical average IQs. That is to say, none of the differences between 10 people from the same family are genetic. Any differences you see in intelligence or intelligence scores are entirely environmental. That's my question. Do you think, assuming no one has any physical defects, do you think differences in intelligence of 10 people from the same family, do you think it's entirely environmental, or do you think there's some genetic role with 10 people from the same family?
It's inconsequential. Doesn't matter. It's just, that's like asking me, man, what tastes better, a Whopper or a Big Mac? That's such an inconsequential thing. It's irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant, literally, to anything other than racial domination.
Well,
There's
I can go to
literally,
the...
hold
Yeah,
on,
go
hold
ahead.
on. There's literally no other reason to come to a conclusion like that or to even raise a question like that. Literally for no other reason other than racial domination justification. There's literally no other reason for that. That's how inconsequential those type of non sequiturs are. They don't really matter in anything other than white supremacist circles, sir. So what you're doing,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, because what you're doing, sir, you are trying to intellectualize some white supremacist views. See, what you're doing is a very covert form of white supremacy that you're doing. You're coming in as if you're just asking a general question. You're just asking about science. You're coming in friendly, like, hey, what do you think about if you had 10 people? And I'm just asking a number about science and numbers. But you're not. And I want black folks to understand how white supremacy works. See, this is a lesson here. White supremacy is not everybody being overtly angry or mean to you. This is the form of white supremacy that's more insidious, when they come in being friendly, but using scientific justifications in order to harm us and trying to get us to agree with it. Notice how this gentleman keeps trying to get me
I
to
can...
agree.
Oh,
No, hold
sorry,
on.
go.
No, this is a great thing because I want to teach my folks here. I want y'all to notice how this gentleman on the phone keeps trying to get me to agree to his racial scientific discoveries. This is all bell curve stuff, by the way. For those who don't know, this is some bell curve shit he's trying to do. And he's trying to kind of remix it and present it so that we can kind of agree with it. So that, hey, as you see, you people have lower IQs and you guys justified it. And that's used to harm us and deprive us of more resources. That's all that's for. It's not for anything else. So, black people, you better understand this type of white supremacy when you encounter it, because it's a passive aggressive, hostile form of white supremacy that many black people don't catch because he's coming in friendly with it. That's the kind of white supremacy that's the problem. Okay? All right.
Am I allowed to respond, or if not, I understand?
Go ahead, Hitch. And
Um,
you're
the,
posting something. Take it off the thing. I don't know what you're posting, but go ahead.
my apologies. It was going to be germane to what I was about to say, but you can delete it, absolutely no problem.
I did.
Yeah, go ahead. What I was going to say is, you kind of asked why it's relevant. I was just going to say why it's relevant, 10 people from the same family, the same parents. IQ predicts job performance within siblings. So siblings that score higher in IQ have a better job performance. So that's why IQ is important. It's highly predictive of especially complicated job performance. So that's why it's relevant. What do you think about that?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't really have anything to do with assessing somebody's IQ. What does that have to do with their job performance? If you look at somebody's IQ, um, people don't look at IQs when you hire people. You just look at their performances and you look at how well they do the job, how well they show up. You look at how well they do things on a personal level. No job looks at anybody's IQ. Nobody measures anybody's IQ for a job. So I don't know where you got that from, sir.
So what I posted in the Jumbotron was college majors by average IQ. And across that, you see physicists have a 135 IQ on average. School teachers have a 105 IQ on average. There you see more complicated jobs require higher IQs. Also in job performance, they've done this in medical fields. Surgeons with higher IQs have less mistakes, less people have issues, less infections, etc. So there's been quite a few studies where they take IQ samples and then they measure job performance as it relates to mistakes. You can also look at this in programming. Programmers with a higher IQ perform better than programmers with a lower IQ that have more output, etc.
So do you think, based on like the bell curve and all that, do you think that people of African descent have lower IQs than people of European descent?
It's a complicated question. I'll try to keep it as short as I can.
On
There's two questions.
On average.
There's two questions here. Is there a gap in scoring, and what is the cause of the gap? The first question is yes, there is a gap in scoring. What is the cause? I would not give any answer on what is the cause. You said very correctly, it's probably a strong environmental impact. That is to say, living in a impoverished environment, impoverished nutrition, violence, etc. This is going to bring down the IQ scores of people in that area. So there's definitely environmental impacts on the black-white IQ gap for sure. But to the question, do Black Americans score lower than white Europeans on average? Yes, they do score lower. There's no dispute about that. Why they score lower? That's a different question altogether.
No, because see, y'all never get into the why. Y'all say that Black people got lower IQs, and then y'all don't want to get into the why. That's a different thing altogether. Then you start talking about environmental issues like nutrition. Why is the nutrition bad in Black areas?
Nutrition, as far as I know, largely comes down to the parenting. The parents decide what they feed the kids, right?
Okay, so why do the parents in Black areas decide to feed kids bad, non-nutritious foods?
You could make a cultural argument. You can make a genetic argument. You can make multiple. I will say this is not my area. Why parents feed their kids worse foods? I'm not. I don't have an answer to that question. You'd have to ask them.
Why don't
I guess.
Sir, you got all types of IQ stats,
Mm-hmm.
and you can answer a simple question as to why more Black people feed their children less nutritious foods. That's not even a trick question. If you got all of these high scientific IQ questions and you can't answer basically a socioeconomic question, why can't you answer that? You have to have a theory. What's your theory?
Well, I can guess as long as it's clear that it's a guess. I don't know the answer to your question. My guess would be two major points. One would be financial. Obviously, you could argue the low socioeconomic status is going to lend itself to ordering more takeout food, etc. Some people would rebut that by saying that takeout food is actually more expensive than cooking a vegetable soup or a spaghetti bolognese, for example. So there's kind of arguments in both directions there. You can make a cultural argument that some cultures have more of a kind of heritage of having a family gathering, and the whole food preparation is a family event. Whereas other cultures may have had a more, if depending on your fast life or slow life history, you may have not have had such an impact or focus on family preparation of food, etc. In that way, you just want a quick, easy meal. Preparing the food isn't important, isn't a kind of family issue. So you can make a cultural argument, or you can make a socioeconomic argument.
Okay, let's go with the socioeconomic argument that there's some financial deficiencies. So why are there financial deficiencies in the Black areas?
Do you think that takeout food is more expensive than, say, a home-cooked meal? What would your view be on that?
No. McDonald's, you can get a gazillion hamburgers for $2. So that's where a lot of impoverished people eat. They eat at places like McDonald's where you can have a couple of dollars and you can feed your family, stuff like that. So why would a lot of Black people be in a financially strapped situation in order for them to get the gazillion piece McNugget meal for $3? Why?
I will answer that. I'll just say my understanding in Australia, at least, because I'm in Australia, a home cooked meal with, say, pasta, spaghetti bolognese, vegetable soup. You feed 6 people with that. It's going to be way cheaper than getting 6 hamburgers in Australia, at least. I don't know the American prices, but in answer to your question, why is there why are Black communities do have a lower socioeconomic income? Is that your question?
Yes, sir. Please don't play dumb. You're dancing
No,
all over.
I just want to clarify.
Okay. You said
generally,
okay.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, my understanding is that a combined family income is generally a result of your employment, right? If you've got a high quality job, you're going to get a high quality income. So combined income is a result of employment. That's my understanding.
Okay, so why are Black people having a lack of employment?
Well, it's not that I don't know if they have less employment, but I do know they have. They take up kind of lower strata jobs. They're not doing kind of physics and this kind of thing.
That's
I guess
called
the
less.
next question is,
That's
yeah, go ahead.
employment. That's called employment. Why? So why? There's less. There's employment deprivation. There's a lot of Black people who are not employed who wish to be. Why is that, sir?
The type of employment you get is generally commensurate with your IQ score. Again, this is going to causation versus descriptive. But why are they not working? I mean, you'd have to ask them. I don't know why they're not working. I know why they're in different jobs. They're in different jobs because they're scoring differently on IQ tests. Why they're
So
scoring differently,
so
it's a more
so your
complicated
so the
question.
whole okay. So your whole thing is circular logic. Black people
How
have
so?
it's
Mhm.
circular. Black people have low IQs, so they get lower paying jobs because of their low IQs. So they eat lower quality food, which contributes more to the low IQs. And they keep getting lower paying jobs so they can eat worse food. And it just goes on and on and on. It's a cycle. You just blame the IQ on the IQ on the IQ. It just goes back to the IQ. So,
Oh no, I've not been talking about causation. I've just been talking about descriptive versus causality. Two different things. I said at the start that causality is very hard to establish. It's very easy to do a quantitative analysis and be descriptive, which is what I'm kind of not trained in, but I focus
but
on
you,
descriptive analysis. Yeah.
okay, but yeah, but that doesn't make sense though, because if you're saying that the bad foods cause the low IQs, okay, what kicked off the bad food? Okay, what kicked
Oh,
off the
it's
bad? Okay, what
yeah.
kicked off the economic deprivation?
Nutrition's going to explain about 10% of the variance in intelligence, so there's still 90% to go. So food wouldn't be being the major cause by any stretch of the imagination, I would say.
Okay, so what caused Black people to have to eat bad foods initially?
Well, there's two hypotheses. I don't know the answer, but I can present them both if you like.
Give me one.
One hypothesis is that due to slavery, Black Americans have been discriminated against consistently. Redlining has applied policies that restricted people in the Black community from getting into better neighborhoods. This has caused them to coalesce in more impoverished neighborhoods. Thus, discrimination explains the entire IQ difference, and that's had a knock-on effect because they've been redlined
Right,
into tighter neighborhoods. Yeah, this is one
right,
hypothesis. Correct.
right, which is the real problem. White supremacy. That's the problem. That's what I'm saying. The problem isn't nothing to do with IQs. Our only problem is what you just confirmed: systematic white supremacy. If we didn't have systematic white supremacy, we wouldn't have food deprivation, economic deprivation, and then, as you said, which I don't agree with, IQ deprivation based on the foods. But the culprit is white supremacy. So if we're going to focus on IQ, let's focus on replacing the system of white supremacy with justice so they do not produce low IQ people, right?
Oh, yeah, that's one hypothesis. The idea is that if you fix discrimination and racism, you would close the IQ gaps to zero. Everybody would have identical IQs, and then everybody would have the same average jobs, basically, right? That's your idea.
That's a proven thing. If we didn't have systematic white supremacy, I think we would be a more advanced society, because it was Black people who were the Moors who went in bringing in high science, mathematics, and intelligence into Europe during the Dark Ages. So that right there alleviates the whole Black low IQ thing. Black people saved Europe. Is that true or false, sir? I want you to acknowledge that either being true or false.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. It's not my area. I'll take your
Okay.
word for it if you say it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
My area is
Yeah.
quantitative analysis.
Got it. Okay. So, because when we go into that IQ thing, some of the earliest
Well, it
universities.
Yeah, if maybe I could ask you a question. Tell me what you think. It's my
Go ahead.
understanding that kind of African immigrants who kind of come over to America, they both have a higher average IQ than Black Americans, and they get high-paying jobs. Why do you think that is? Given that they're both Black, is it hard to argue discrimination in that case? Coleman Hughes, a kind of Black intellectual, he kind of forwards this point. I've not heard a good answer yet. What would you say to that?
I would say, have you seen your latest Uber driver? A lot of African immigrants come over here and they're driving Uber and working minimum wage, sir. So this whole myth that they're coming and getting all of these high-paying jobs, and I'm not denigrating our African brothers and sisters, but a lot of them are working Uber and Postmates and minimum wage jobs. So what you're saying is a myth. And if we're going to,
as far as I understand, I can present you with some studies if you want. I don't know if you've seen different ones, but the average African immigrant has a higher average income than the average Black American. That's my understanding. Do you think that's
no,
not
well,
true?
no, they have a higher household income. Okay. Now let's put the words in context. They have a higher household income. You know why?
Oh,
Hadn't found
please,
it.
I'd love to know.
I'm gonna tell you why. See, y'all leave little words out. Yeah, the African immigrants have a higher household income. See, they look at income based on what's bringing in for the whole household. Foundational Black American households are usually run by one or two people. African immigrant households have 30 people living in the motherfuckers, and everybody's working Uber. So, yeah, the income is going to be higher. You got to count every 30 or 40 people living in the house. So, yeah, it's higher. They got more people living in the house, more adults in
With
there. That's the thing
yeah,
you got to tell. It's not that they're working harder, it's just more people in the house. You
with
understand?
respect, with respect, Tariq, Coleman Hughes, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's got 2 articles on this. It's classed as family income being people genetically related. There's no way that you're going to have, friends and cousins and relatives contributing to family income. I can forward the Coleman Hughes articles to you if you like.
Um, that makes no sense. What do you mean? There's no way you're going to have family and friends contributing to the
So
income? What is?
are you saying that like people who are genetically unrelated, they're all living in the same house and they're all working, Uber jobs, and there's 20 of them in the house, as you said, or something like that,
Many
and
of
that they're
these,
going to
no,
be
I'm saying,
classed.
yeah, I'm saying many of these immigrant households, there are a lot of people living in the households bringing in incomes. You have several adults living under one roof. That's very common for them. And so, yeah, on paper, the income is going to be higher because there's 10, 15 people living under one roof who are adults in many cases. It's not just one or two people like foundational Black Americans. You understand what I'm saying? But, and
Um,
also,
uh,
go
Go ahead.
ahead.
No, I
And
get the
also,
point that you're making, but I disagree that that's what the data says. When they talk about families, they mean 1, 2 adults and children.
no,
That's what
they're
they
not.
mean by family income.
No, they're not. No, no, no. They means everybody in the house. That doesn't mean one or two people and the children. Family means everybody living in that house. And immigrant groups, they have several adults living under one roof. And all of that income counts as one family income. That's the reality. And Coleman Hughes is a white ass kissing Sambo with bad faith arguments. He's Puerto Rican. He's not even a foundational Black American. He
Is he
pretends.
Puerto Rican? Oh my
Yes,
God, I
he
didn't
is.
know that. Puerto
Yes, he's
Rican.
Puerto Rican. Yep, he's Puerto Rican,
I
and
always thought he was Black American.
no, he's not. He's not Black American at all. He pretends to be Black American. He's actually Puerto Rican. Look his background up. So he's a prime example of what we're
Oh my
talking about.
goodness, Coleman Hughes has been tricking me this whole time.
Yes, indeed. And he's a melanated face that works with these white supremacist think tanks. He works with them, and they have him go out here and spew their talking points. He's with Quillette. That's one of these white supremacist think tanks, and they put these talking points out, and they put their melanated tethers out here to pretend to be us. That's what a tether is. But Coleman Hughes, his name is Coleman Cruz Hughes. He likes to leave the Cruz out because it sounds too Latino, which is what he is. So yeah, he's not a representative of us at all. But go ahead.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that East Asians score higher on IQ tests than white Europeans, and also East Asians have a higher average income than Europeans? Is it discrimination against Europeans, or how are the East Asians doing so well, do you think?
East Asians, well, look at some of the policies now. When immigrants come over here, Asians included, they are elevated over foundational Black Americans. Not only that, when they come here, when they flee here from Asia, and when people flee here from South America, what they leave home, they leave their child support payments back home, they leave their bad credit back home, and they come over here as adults and start off with a fresh new social security number, a fresh new line of credit, and a whole tax base of money that's allocated to them by certain political lobby groups. So they get elevated and assisted with our tax dollars. So, yeah, they do good because of the policies that we actually, foundational Black Americans, help fight for them to get. Asians came over here in the 1960s in large numbers, and that was because of foundational Black Americans fighting for not only those immigration policies. When the Asians got here, we were the ones who were the economic base for their businesses. When they opened up liquor stores and nail shops, we didn't discriminate against them. We saw them as another oppressed minority. We said we'll support them. So we've supported some of these groups and elevated them and helped them. They can't sit here and talk about how intelligent they are, and your homeland is a shithole. You understand? So that kills the intelligence argument right there. If you got so much intelligence, why is people out there shitting in the streets over in these homelands? Explain that.
Oh, like Japan and Taiwan? I mean, East Asians, I mean, like Japanese, Taiwanese, etc.
No, those are not the
South
ones who
Korean.
immigrate here. Let's stop. Those aren't those are not the ones who immigrate here. The ones from Japan. Let's don't play that game. You know
And I
good and
mean,
well.
East Asians, right? East Asians,
Oh, don't
Chinese,
stop
Han
it.
Chinese.
Y'all trying to play this game. The Japanese don't immigrate over here like that. It's some of these Thai and Cambodian and Laos and some of these other groups come over here, and they score high over here. They get access to proper educations, which is cool. But if it's a genetic thing, why are their homelands in shambles to the point where they have to flee?
My understanding is that there's Han Chinese, who are the Chinese Americans, and Chinese Americans outperform white Europeans, both in IQ tests and also in higher average income. That was my question. Why do Chinese Americans perform so well? They beat, even the kind of white majority. They outperform them by a significant margin. That was my
But then you
question.
would have to, okay, so because that's strange. I gotta you got to qualify that question, because if that's the case, why are they working for pennies in factories in China if they have so much intelligence that they bring here? Why are they working for pennies over there in them factories?
Oh yeah, I completely agree. Like an economic policy, for example, communism. This is going to yield a different result for the same kind of genetic group. But as far as I know, and tell me if you've heard different, Chinese Americans outperform white Europeans both in IQ and in income. Is that your understanding for Chinese
Okay,
Americans?
but you said something interesting. You said because of communism, that's going to have an effect on economic outcomes. Is that what you said?
Oh yeah, I said economic. An economic ideology such as communism, where have the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie, or the government controls the means of production. This is going to have obviously affect how much individual companies can use the free market to both help themselves and individuals attain higher income. So to hold
Oh,
all the variables constant,
great.
I'm
Got
comparing
it.
Chinese
That's
Americans. Yeah.
great point. So they can't really thrive over there because of the oppressive communist system, where they can't really thrive in the free market because of the system of oppression, which is communism, which I agree. So when we point out the same oppressive system of white supremacy that puts systematic obstacles in our way as foundational Black Americans, people kind of try to ignore that and say, oh, no, 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 it's not the oppressive system, it's just the IQs. No, it's the oppressive system here that thwarts a lot of our progress. That's why they put the system there, right?
Definitely any oppressive system in principle is going to have an impact. But I guess I'm curious on your view why Chinese Americans outperform European Americans. That's my kind of curious. If you have any ideas on that.
Well, they outperform how? What do you mean they outperform?
Chinese Americans on average score 106 on IQ tests. White Americans score 100. Chinese Americans' average income is something like 30% higher. than European Americans, white Americans. So Chinese Americans are outperforming Europeans both on IQ tests and income and various other metrics. Chinese Americans have lower crime rates than white Americans. They leave more, by all kinds of metrics, Chinese Americans are outperforming white Americans. I'm just curious if you knew that, and if you're just curious if you have any ideas why.
Well, my thing is, if that's the case, why are there so many Chinese Americans and people who come over here and they're in these school scams? They get into these school scandals where they are faking their test results left and right. Do you know how major that is? Google that. There's a lot of Chinese students who come over here, and there's several cases where they are scamming scores on their test, getting into these schools, getting these degrees. There's all types of Chinese scam degrees going on over here. So if there's all of this intelligence, why is there a need to have all of these school scams? That's pretty common. And I want you to Google what I just told you.
No, I'm across it. I know what you're talking about. I kind of used one example. A few years ago, the Australian cricket team, they were on top. They were beating everyone. And a couple of the players started tampering with the ball. You might ask yourself, why would a team that's already winning start doing ball tampering? I guess my answer would be to both questions. Anybody can cheat. Anybody can try to get an advantage. Doesn't matter if they're white Americans, Chinese Americans, or whatever. Or whatever took place there, I agree. It's probably had some impact, but there was an ABC study recently. It was a $500 million study of 10-year-old kids, and that had a genetic study and an IQ test, and both tests reflected that East Asians have a higher average IQ than white Europeans. I'm trying to stick to the white Chinese
No,
American kind of example.
because that one contradicts the other, dude. I'm in LA, man. There was a big cheating. There was a whole cheating ring at UCLA out here, man. That they busted all these people. If you got all these IQs and
Were
your
they all
IQ,
Chinese, or was it mixed? Were they all
there
Chinese, or
was a
was it
there was a
mixed people?
Chinese cheating bust. Google it. Google the Los Angeles UCLA Chinese cheating ring. Google Chinese cheating rampant in U.S. colleges. It's rampant, brother.
There
Yeah,
was a recent. Tell me if I'm mistaken. There was a recent kind of expose where white Americans were also paying their way into university and cheating on tests,
yeah,
right?
yes, them too.
So it's
Yes,
not exclusive to the Chinese Americans, though, right?
didn't say that, but we don't do it. We damn show Black Foundational Black Americans. We got to earn ours. We don't have no cheating rings at all.
Well, let's say the Chinese Americans are somehow cheating on all their IQ tests across the board. Why do they have a higher average income? Why do they get better jobs, and why do they earn more money? Would you say Chinese Americans?
Because they get funded by the states here. They get just like we're seeing now. What we're seeing right now is the reason why. Number one, they get funded by the white supremacists. They get prioritized for funding. They get prioritized for businesses, and their businesses do not get sabotaged. Also, their underground market doesn't get tampered with, meaning the drugs and the guns that they sell on the underground market, they don't bust that up like they do black underground economies. All of the fentanyl and all of that stuff, that's coming from Chinese ships. They got an underground market of drugs and guns, and they have the Chinese El Chapo. It was an Asian guy. I want to say he was part of the Chinese mafia. This guy was making billions of dollars. These guys were making El Chapo seem like a corner boy. So you guys, the Asian community, they have an underground economy, an underground market, a criminal enterprise that's not tampered with, and they get underwritten by tax dollars so that they can be elevated over foundational Black Americans. So they're elevated by the white supremacist. That's why they do better
Um,
than certain people.
Yeah, pardon me if you've covered this in your books. I haven't got around to reading all of them, but I guess the next question would be the group that performs the best. I won't say why they perform because I don't know, but the Ashkenazi Jews, the Jewish Americans, they have an even higher IQ than the Chinese Americans. Also, their average income is higher than the Chinese Americans. They seem to perform the best. Why do the Jewish Americans do so well, in your view, both in IQ tests and also in average income?
And so you're saying their religion has something to do with their IQ?
No, the Ashkenazi Jews are a genetic group. If you plot them, I can post something to the Jumbotron if you want, but I guess you don't want me to. There's a genetic chart. It's something called a cluster analysis. You can also use principal component analysis. You can see the Ashkenazi Jews, genetically, they're substantially different to white Europeans. I know I've heard it before in some of the Black American rooms. They say
What's the origin of
Jews are
the lineage?
white.
What's the origin of their lineage?
The Ashkenazi Jews, the male lineage comes from the Levantine. They've got an extra Levantine admixture. There's some controversial about this, depending on which geneticist you talk to. But generally speaking, the maternal lineage, the mother's line, that comes from European. The father's line comes from the North African, Middle East, or the Levantine kind of area. So they're Semitic or Arabic, to put it in simple terms, but Levantine or Levantine is their genetic line. So they're genetically
Got it.
different to
So
white Americans.
Okay, so northeast Africa, kind of over there in east that area, because you have a lot of the some East African people who are Jews too. So in fact, there's an East African tribe who's a Jewish tribe over there in Southeast Africa.
Yeah, great
So
point, because it's both a religious group and an ethnic group. But
right,
if you
because
take
see
the
that.
religion out of it, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, all right, we're going to go to the contradiction because okay, we're going to go back and you're saying there's an African tribe where they come part of that lineage comes from Africa and they got a higher IQ. Then you're saying that
North Africa, not
oh,
sub-Saharan
okay,
Africa. Yeah.
okay. So again, I don't that whole sub-Saharan Africa thing because you got black people in North Africa too, and in fact, the Europeans would always portray Jewish people as black. Okay, that was the whole argument with Hitler and the Nazis. That you understand that, right? That was the problem that they had with Jewish people. It
The
wasn't
Jewish people are black, and I've not heard this. Sorry,
no.
I'm not
Why did no
honestly,
no?
I'm not well
I'm
educated on
telling
this.
you that's the problem that they had with Jewish people because Hitler, and if you read Mein Kampf, he would say, well, the problem with Jews, they're a race of Negroes. That's what he said in Mein Kampf. That was the
Jews are
whole.
Negroes? Oh, I didn't know that. I'm not up with Mein
I'm
Kampf. I
telling
haven't
you
read
what
it.
the white supremacists said. I'm telling you what the white supremacists said in Germany and all of that. And really going back some years, the whole narrative was that Jewish people are really a race of Negroes. That's what they said. This is what they were saying.
Oh,
So,
it's interesting.
right. So if you're going to go into the IQ thing, and you just said that, well, the part of that lineage goes into North Africa, then and the Jewish people, their IQs are higher. Would that come from the African lineage?
Again, I will say I'm not trying to be rude or argumentative, but these days genetically, there's a massive divide between sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa. The
What's the
Jewish
divide? How
lineage
so?
comes from there's something called genetic distance, or FST distance. It's fixation index. It's a measure of a genetic distance between two groups. And what you see is the
Slow down,
biggest.
slow
Yeah,
down, because y'all play this
sure,
game with North Africa and Southern Africa.
sure. North Africans have a big genetic difference between sub-Saharan Africans. You can observe it visually, you can observe it genetically, you can observe it medically. The way
How
that the medical go ahead.
how so? When
So
people they were hold on, let me say this because
yeah,
people
sure.
North Africa is not really landlocked from Southern Africa. They can travel back and forth. They have the Nile River,
Well, it's
which
the
was the super
Sahara
highway.
Desert, right? The Sahara
Yeah, but
Desert is
no,
the
no, no. Let's
barrier.
stop with that. No, no, no. That Sahara Desert that doesn't stop the cultures from running up and down Africa. The Nile River runs from North Africa to Southern Africa. You understand? And then on the east, the west side of Africa, they can go into North Africa from the west side. So it's not landlocked. There are no land boundaries stopping the people from interacting with each other. So people try, a lot of white supremacists try to make it seem like there's some kind of like the Saharan desert is like some kind of ocean that they got to cross. No, it's not. The
Well,
people
you can
move
plot.
freely. They move freely up
Yeah.
and down Africa and
Sorry, go.
interacted. And there's black people, many black people in North Africa. You have invaders who came later, and a lot of the people with the so-called genetic differences are really invaders from other places, the Turks and the Eurasians and all of that stuff. But black people move freely up and down North and South Africa. There was not a real big difference. But go ahead.
Yeah, let's say I make no claims about the origins of the differences. Everything you say could be completely true. I only mean today, right now, if you take a genetic cross section of a North African and Sub-Saharan Africa and you plot them on a genetic chart, it's called a PCA or a principal component analysis. You'll see that North Africans are very far away today from Sub-Saharan Africans very far today. So whatever happened in the past, then I'm making no claims. But genetically today, the Ashkenazi Jews that exist, they're genetically, very, very different to Sub-Saharan Africans. That's the only claim, that when you sample people today, there's a massive difference between North Africans and Sub-Saharan Africans genetically.
But back in the days, if you're going to go to lineage, because many people migrated and moved all over the place, but if you're going to talk about lineage, you're going to talk about the lineage, what it was, and what were the people looking like centuries ago. And if we're talking about many Jewish people, you had so-called sub-Saharan black people who were Jews going up and down North Africa and South Africa, and even going into Europe. Look up a man, Eldan the Danite, who was a very famous black Jewish person who really spread a lot of information about Judaism to Europe. I want to say in the 8th or 9th century, Eldan the Danite. There's an African tribe over there in East Africa, Jewish black tribe, and in many European documents, they would always portray, early documents, they would portray Jewish people as either black or mulatto race. That was part of what was the Inquisition about in Spain too. When they were getting the Moors out, they were also getting the Jewish population out, because the Jewish population, according to the Europeans there and the Spanish, they had a significant black and African bloodline. So there's always been this narrative that Jewish people have a significant African bloodline. So your argument about them being more intelligent, that would contribute to that African bloodline, right?
Well, it depends on your time frame. My understanding is everything you're referring to. Well, I don't know exactly the details of what you're referring to. But my understanding is the divergence happened, I don't know, some 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, if not longer. If you want to go back, further enough, we all came from Africa. 60,000 years ago, we were all black, as far as I know. So yeah,
Ain't
the
going
lineage, any IQ differences you see today, all come from Africa. We are all African.
right. Well, I'm not going back that far. See, I don't want to do the catch-all thing, because see, when you start
How
talking about,
far are you going back, if you don't mind me asking? Like 100 years, 5,000 years, like roughly?
it's how far am I going back to what? Because you're the one who said,
When you say that the kind of the Jews were melanated and had black skin, etc., how far back was that?
well, this was a couple of centuries going into Europe. This is what they said. This is what they were saying a few centuries ago. And you were the one who said, you brought up the fact that the
Yeah,
Jewish
yeah.
people weren't really white. You said, this is you. You said they weren't really white. And that lineage goes back to North Africa, which is black. You can try to remix it, but North Africa, some centuries ago, is pretty black. A lot of these invaders came later, but a few centuries ago, North Africa was very, very black.
I should have kind of prefaced this, and I mean, anybody can look this up. I'm not making it up. There's three, genetically, if you take out the religious aspect, genetically, there's at least three types of Jews, major clusters. Ashkenazi, who are the white European Jews, Ben Stiller, Ben Shapiro, they're kind of examples of Ashkenazi Jews. There's the Sephardic Jews and the Mizrahi Jews. The Sephardic and
So, oh,
Mizrahi
wait,
are North
let's slow
African. The
down.
Ashkenazi are European.
Okay, so now you're saying there are white Jews.
No. What I'm saying is there's three groups. Two of the groups are mostly North African and Middle East. One of the groups has a substantial amount of European admixture, but they're different to Europeans. In the same way that Southern Italians are different to Northern Italians. People might not know that and might think they're the same.
Okay,
But there's
slow it down. Let's
there's
slow
a
it down.
difference between.
Okay, so there's all these differences. What makes a person genetically pure white?
There's no such thing as pure white. Europeans today are
Right,
a mixture of three historical groups.
right.
It's the
So, right,
early two farming groups and one
right.
Anatolian group.
So if there's no such thing as pure white, you can't say which group of Europeans is less white than the other. It's
But
all it's all relative to whatever person is kind of making the designation. White is white.
uh,
And
No,
no.
I can
Uh,
explain why if you like.
I would love that. You just said you can't.
Yeah,
Nobody's
I
just
can explain it. Yeah.
white. Explain it, sir.
Yeah, so if you'll permit me, I can post something in Jumbotron. If you don't want me to, I won't, but it'll make it
No.
easier to
Just
explain.
explain it. Make it simple. Just make it simple. What's
Yeah,
if
so
you just proved the point. Yeah, nobody's
I'll explain
genetically
it. I'll
white.
explain it. No problem. I'll explain it. It's easy to look at visually, but I will explain it verbally. No problem. Um, Europeans are made up of three groups: two farming groups and one hunter-gatherer groups.
Oh
Those
Lord.
three groups came together to make Europeans. As soon as you add a fourth or a fifth group, that's when you're getting divergence. That's when you can claim that these people are substantially
Let's slow
different
down.
to Europeans.
Slow
Hmm.
down, slow down. Okay,
Hmm.
you said
Yes.
these groups got together to make Europeans. What that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. You got to slow that down. What are you talking about?
So there was three. Have you heard of David Reich? He's a very famous geneticist.
No.
David Reich has a book on this, who we are and how we got here. Anybody can look it up. But basically, one group came from kind of modern day Iran. That was I forget the abbreviation, but there's an abbreviation for it. They were an early farmer group. They migrated up to Europe. There was already an existing group there, kind of more towards the North Europe. They were from memory, they were kind of another farming group. Then there were the Eastern Europeans. They were kind of a hunter-gatherer group. Those three groups intermixed. You can see in the chart, if anyone goes to my wall and just go search on my profile and type 20, you'll see a color chart. The color chart will show the admixture. Now, all Europeans have three of those groups. I think it's EAA.
Which
I forget the abbreviation,
which
but
one
they're
of them are
cluster groups.
which one is the Neanderthal group? Because there's a Neanderthal group there too.
Yeah, the Neanderthals are not. I mean, they were a group a long time ago, but they're not accurately reflected in a cluster analysis. They basically would have mixed in with at least two of the groups: the Siberian group, which was the Northern European group, and probably the Eastern. Again, David Reich's got a paper on that. I need to double check the paper, but yeah, Neanderthal admixture, as far as I know, is in every group except sub-Saharan Africans. But
Right.
my point is
Right.
that these three genetic families or groups or clusters, they came together to make Europeans. All Europeans have some mixture of these three groups. When you add a fourth group and a fifth group, such as the Ashkenazi Jews have a Levantine admixture, none of the other Europeans have this Levantine admixture. This is what makes them genetically distinct. So any family group that has those three clusters, you can call them European. When you add a fourth and a fifth cluster genetically, that's when you're starting to diverge away from the
Now, where
European
did okay, let's slow
cluster.
it down. Let's slow it down. So these three groups, where did these groups come from? And how did they become white skinned Europeans?
Well, now we're really getting into the weeds. I need to refer to the book, but I'll go off my memory. If I make any mistakes, anyone please fact check me. But your question was, sorry, can you ask the question again? Because I'm just trying to go off my
Okay, out
memory.
of these three groups, you said there were these three groups that came
Yes,
together
yes,
somewhere. Where did they came from? Somewhere. So how did
yes,
they become white skinned Europeans that we see
yes.
now?
Great question. So one of the groups came from modern day Iran. I believe it was kind of around the Iran Georgian area. They would have had dark skin with dark eyes. I believe. Sorry,
Right.
dark skin with light. Sorry, dark skin with lighter color eyes. That's one of the groups. Okay, from around Iran, Georgia, etc. One of the other groups came from the northern European area, kind of around Siberia. That's where it's believed in David Reich's book, if you believe what he says. The blonde haired mutation comes from Northern Europe. That's where blonde hair originated. And then you had the kind of, brown skinned Eastern European hunter gatherers. So those three groups came together and then they formed the modern day Europeans. One group gave the lighter skin, the other group gave the kind of blonde hair, and then the other group contributed something different. So it was a Siberian group from memory that
So then,
contributed most of the light skin and blonde hair.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Because come on, let's look at some of the genetic flaws there. Because when white mixes with a black admixture, the offspring comes out black or brown. All right. So
Great point. You get something called genetic drift. Genetic drift is once the groups come together, you can get a natural selection effect. Natural selection meaning one group leaves more surviving offspring. So you are correct. When the mixing took place, there would have been, some of the groups would have been darker, etc. Any mutations that occurred to give any group an advantage, that group would have left more surviving offspring, especially in the north, where there's kind of lower sunlight, etc. The kids would have, via genetic drift and natural selection and what they call fitness, fitness meaning leaving more surviving offspring, you could easily see the skin color change from kind of a light brown to a more kind of white pale color.
And why?
Genetic drift, mutation,
Why
and natural
and
selection
why?
is the
What,
answer.
what and why and why? Why did it go from brown to pale and blonde hair? Why did they become depigmented?
Well, this is because of natural selection and mutation. Natural selection and differential mutation, right? Mutations cause differences in people, and then you get genetic drift and natural selection. That is to
Why
say,
would you have?
um,
Why would you have a mutation like that, particularly in
oh, now I
northern
get what
Europe?
you're saying. Now I get what you're saying.
Yeah, why would
So
you?
the
Why would you have
advantage,
that mutation? Because that's not
yeah,
natural to
well,
Earth.
the advantage of white skin is it can absorb more vitamin D. The less vitamin D you have, you get all kinds of bone deficiencies, iron deficiencies, all kinds of uptake deficiencies. So, having a lighter skin, it's believed, this is why in Nordic countries where they don't have much sunlight, they're kind of the most pale. Having a lighter skin absorbs more sunlight. That's why in kind of warmer climates, you generally see the people are melanated or darker. This is to protect against the UV rays in warmer climates. So colder climates produce lighter skin to absorb more vitamin D and things of this nature because they have less hours of sunlight as well in the Nordic countries. So vitamin D absorption is one hypothesis. No one knows for sure, but that's the most popular theory
You
that
know what though?
lighter skin absorbs vitamin D.
Well, you know what one of the theories is. Well, let's because what you're the guy who you're naming,
David
some of
Wright.
David Ross, some of his theories kind of contradict some of the other theories written by certain scholars. Was that one thing we know? There was a group of black people who migrated from Africa, the Grimaldi people, who migrated into Europe. They were black people, and their artifacts and bones are still up there. They still excavate them. There were a lot of black people in Europe. That's why they dug up Cheddar Man. Remember a few years ago they dug up what a British person looked like a few thousand years ago, and it was a black person with blue eyes. I remember that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right. So the theory was that black people were migrating up there from Africa into Europe, and they got caught in the last ice age, the Wormian ice age, right? And that Wormian ice age locked people in there, and the depigmentation happened in order to cope with being in that ice age. If you're in an area that's full of snow and it's cold, darker skin would be an issue. So natural selection, they said they were depigmented. They became depigmented in order to better cope with the environment. This is what some of the scientists have theorized. This is why the nose became more aquiline and the hair grew longer in order to cover the vital organs in the neck and things like that. So there's different theories. Different theories. The point
Yeah, Tariq,
is,
you're very well researched on this. I'm very impressed, Tariq. I didn't know
right,
you
right,
were
right.
kind of well versed in this kind of area.
Yeah. I've read different theories. I've read different theories, but the point is, the the theory is that the Europeans had a form of albinism. They were already black people, and they had a form of albinism, and the people with the albinism kind of mated with each other and continued with more albinized offspring. So that was the theory. That was the theory. So that goes back to the whole IQ thing. So if the Europeans who actually came from African people, when did the IQ get lower? That's what I want to know, because that's the theory.
Um, when did the IQ get lower of Europeans? Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Or yeah. So yeah, if Europeans, based on that, the Wormian Ice Age theory, were that they were part of the Grimaldi people who got caught up in the Wormian Ice Age and they became depigmented. Um, if they were initially African people, when they became depigmented, did the IQ increase? Because that's where the IQ thing gets all over the place. When did this IQ thing kick in? What makes one other group have a more superior IQ if they came from a certain other group? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Richard. Look, I'll be honest. And anyone who says they know the answer to this question is lying. People have only have hypothesis, so I can present one
Right.
here. Um, Richard Dawkins has a book called The Selfish Gene, and in that book, he basically talks about historically evolution happened at the extremes. That is to say, if you had a tiny advantage. In a modern day society, having a small advantage does not matter. Where you have, everyone's needs are taken care of for the most part. Very few people starve to death, in a kind of a Western developed country. But if you imagine 5,000, 10,000 years ago, having a tiny advantage could help you leave more surviving offspring, and that's the key. So the idea is, in times of food scarcity, when everybody was being violent, fighting each other, there was barely any food. Having a kind of tiny IQ advantage would mean you could probably leave more surviving offspring. Whereas the people who were lower IQ, they would leave less surviving offspring, if any at all. So a lot of the lower IQ people would have been killed off because in evolution happens at the extremes. It happens quickly when there's privation, starvation, a lot of violence. So the idea is basically that within any group, you can pick any group you want. Europeans, you're going to get some dumb people, some smart people. If you only
All
let the
right.
smart people
All right.
have kids, then you're going to produce a smarter group of
I
people.
got it. All right, let's go back though, because see now, if you have a higher IQ, you wouldn't have to resort to be violent to kill the so-called lower IQ people. The person doing the killing is more animalistic and barbaric, and that's based on numbers, even numbers that they do now. They say people who have less intelligence quotient, or people who are not able to verbalize themselves in an intelligent way, are more physically violent to compensate for the lack of intelligence and verbal responses. So if
Yeah,
you're
that's
doing
true. That's a
this
great point. That's a great point.
right, so if you are violent, that means you are less intelligent because intelligent people can just kind of figure things out without killing every damn body, which is what black people were doing. Black people were living in more tropical, warm, inviting environments. So you didn't have to kill nobody in order to eat. So your survival mechanism to
Yeah,
conquer people, I don't think it has to do with intelligence. I think it's if we want to look at it from even your logic, comes from an innate savagery. Now, some people can be more savage than others because you have a I have to survive mindset. That doesn't make you more intelligent just because you're more savage. Like I'm more
yeah. I just want to
willing
be
to
clear.
kill. Yeah.
I just want to be clear. I just want to be clear. I have not said the word savage or called anybody savage, just in case anyone's
Right.
listening. Yeah.
But when you say um, you certain groups will kill the other groups who are less intelligent. No, you don't know. Intelligent people don't have to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I can introduce one thing here: Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which basically says when all your needs are met, it's easier to be peaceful. When you're near starving to death, you will eat your own sibling if it means surviving. So
Right.
Maslow's hierarchy is kind of an artificial thing. There's going to be limited resources in certain countries. So even if you produce the highest IQ group, if you put them in an area with limited resources, they will become violent in accordance with Maslow's hierarchy. So it's not
Right.
necessarily the case. If you're
Okay.
high IQ, you can never be violent under any circumstances.
Right. Now, people are products of their environment. And if you come from a very hostile, unforgiving environment, you're going to be reflective of that environment. Where, in Black environments and African environments where Black people were, indigenous dark people were, they could be more harmonious because they knew the earth. They knew nature. Nature was on their side. They could walk with their clothes off and they were one with nature. When you live in a hostile environment where you're stuck in an ice age and in a cave and you have to eat raw meat and you have to wear a bear's wool on your back and all of this stuff and you got to knock your lady in the head and rape her in order to have a baby, that creates a certain mindset, right? Historically, that would create a certain mindset and a certain level of savagery, some people would hypothesize. So I don't think that has to do anything with intelligence. I think the more intelligent people will say, hey, how can we live peacefully and we can feed a community peacefully and live harmoniously peacefully without having to resort to savagery and start murdering people just because. I think this is why so many black societies were of high intelligence early on. Egyptian societies, Kemetic, which were black, they were able to thrive for thousands of years because of the camaraderie with the environment and them understanding how to live peacefully. They weren't known to be a violent people. I think the less violent you are, the more intelligent you are, right?
Is it your view that in well, this is a question to you. Like in sub-Saharan Africa, there's multiple groups. Let's take three main ones: West Africans, East Africans, and South Africans are the Khoisan, are the kind of black people. They click. They have kind of a lighter skin.
Yeah, they look
Um,
Asian.
uh,
They look Asian. Yes.
yeah, they do. They do. That's correct. And also, if we introduce the pygmy people, is it your what is your view on intelligence for those 4 or 5 groups? Do you think they're all equally intelligent, or would you say maybe do you think the Bantus are more intelligent than the pygmies? For kind of reference, the Bantus score 80 on IQ test, the pygmies score
That
55, even though
can't
they're remote.
that's impossible to quantify. It's almost impossible. It's literally impossible to quantify because they still live in a traditional hunter-gatherer existence. If we were to get those people somewhere in a classroom or give them a tutor and um, teach them certain things in their own language, we don't know what level of intelligence these people might have. We just don't know. They just choose to live in a more um, traditional way that's conducive of their tribal cultural history. So, what level of intelligence as compared to the education system now? That's it's like apples and oranges. We can't really compare that.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because occasionally I'll hear Ethiopians say West Africans are low IQ. Then I'll hear West Africans say Nigerians are low IQ. So I don't know that much about those areas. So I was just curious. Obviously, some of your descent obviously is from sub-Saharan Africa. So I was just curious.
Yeah,
Why is there so many groups kind of insulting each other in that way? Is there any truth to that in your view or
yeah.
anything that you've
We
heard?
don't do that. But well, I'm a foundational Black American. We don't talk to each other or go into each other about IQs because we're one group. We know that we're one group. We don't play that tribalistic stuff over here. That makes us different, and that's why, as far as Black people globally, we've been the ones who are the representatives of Black people globally. Whenever you think of a Black person, you think of a foundational Black American because we've been the most on code, and we've been on code is because one of the reasons why we don't have those tribal differences. We all kind of click up with each other, and we know that we have to interact with each other in order to survive as an ethnic group. So that's why we've been as relatively successful. I say successful in a relative sense because we're still under the system of white supremacy. So
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that approach, and I want to ask you something, if I can, about some of the rooms I've been in the spaces. They've said that this is. I've heard it said seriously. I don't know if they're joking with me, but they kind of say the white gene or the white mutation, the white skin. They believe it to be not of Earth, to have come from another planet. Have you heard this? And what do you think
no,
about
I
this?
don't. I don't believe that. Yeah, I don't. No, 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 no. No, that would that gives white supremacists supernatural powers, and they're not supernatural. That's not true. Black people kind of. I don't know who does. I don't. That's probably some immigrants who. I don't know who said that, but foundational Black Americans. I don't believe we said no shit like that. But it is what it is. But anyway, let me get some more call. I think the conversation has been very real. I
Thank
want to
you,
check.
Tariq. It's been an absolute pleasure. Just let me say one thing, if it's okay. I don't like to talk about race differences. People ask me about it. I only talk about individual differences. That is to say, differences in IQ from two people from the same group or same family. That's what I focus on. I don't go around running around talking about race differences, even though people say that. So if people ask me, I'll try and answer. But my focus is individual differences, not race or group differences. But thanks for your time, Tariq. I really
Oh,
appreciate it. I hope to talk to you soon.
all right. Thank you. All right. All right. That was interesting, right? That was an interesting conversation. Very, very interesting. All right. We've been on here for a long time. That was long, and y'all been hanging in there. But I think there's a lot of people from overseas tapping in right now. But I thank everybody for tuning in and hanging in that long. It was a long conversation. Shit, I've been on here for 3 hours, man. I'm looking at the time. Damn. But anyway, man, let me get out of here. Let me let y'all go to sleep, and let me get my ass to sleep and all that. I know my wife is like, nigga, what are you doing? But anyway, man, look, go to rootworkstyle.com. Get the Rootwork deodorant, rootworkstyle.com, ladies and gentlemen. And go to my YouTube channel, Tariq Radio, because we're going to show, hopefully, we'll have the everything ready so we can show the trailer for the new documentary. And anyway, you guys have a great night. Papi Akute and Lola Vuve to you. Peace.